Commissioner Gordon, Bane has escaped.
To train like a warrior is to enter each day as if it were preparation for battle, not a metaphorical battle, not some poetic struggle, but the real confrontation with life itself. The warrior knows that without discipline, his body betrays him. Without repetition, his skill decays. Without vigilance, his instincts dull. He trains when there is no enemy in sight, because he knows the enemy is always closer than it appears. This is not about muscles or weapons. It is about making yourself unshakable in the face of chaos. Training like a warrior means building the capacity to endure what others collapse under. It is standing firm when storms rage, because storms are inevitable. Thinking like a king requires a different posture. The king cannot act as the soldier does, reacting blindly to every strike. The king must see farther, must weigh the cost of every move, must govern not only himself but the domain he is building. The king thinks in terms of legacy, in terms of what remains when his body has fallen. A warrior may fight for victory, but a king fights for order that outlives him. When you think like a king, you begin to calculate differently. You no longer act for the day alone. You act for the decade, for the dynasty, for the mark that remains after your story ends. A warrior's training is relentless because it knows no forgiveness. You cannot bargain with failure. You cannot plead with unpreparedness. You are either ready or you are broken. This is the creed of the warrior, and to adopt it means stripping away excuses until only action remains. The king's thinking complements this creed. He does not only prepare for the single fight, but for the countless wars of succession, betrayal, and politics. The union of both mentalities is power. Training without vision is wasted energy. Vision without preparation is fragile arrogance. Together, they form the architecture of greatness. Endurance defines the warrior. He is measured not by how he strikes, but by how long he can continue to strike when exhausted. To train like one means to put yourself in discomfort deliberately, and discomfort becomes a natural climate. Every repetition is not just about strength. It is about teaching your mind to continue under conditions that would make others quit. A king, however, understands that endurance alone is not enough. He must harness it, direct it, and use it strategically. He cannot afford to waste effort on battles that do not matter. His endurance is filtered through wisdom. Discipline forms the blood of the warrior's life. Without it, chaos takes the body hostage. To rise each morning with intent, to sweat, to build, to refine. This is the rhythm that separates the prepared from the doomed. To think like a king is to see the structure hidden inside discipline. The king knows the soldier trains not simply to fight today, but to maintain order tomorrow. He understands that the discipline of one is the stability of many. This is why both postures are inseparable. The warrior survives through his own effort, while the king sustains others through his vision. Sacrifice defines both the warrior and the king. The warrior sacrifices comfort for readiness. He sacrifices time for skill. He sacrifices leisure for survival. The king sacrifices popularity for order. He sacrifices indulgence for the future. He sacrifices personal ease for the endurance of his kingdom. Both understand that power without sacrifice collapses. Both live in the shadow of loss, yet they turn it into fuel. To train like a warrior and think like a king is to accept that every gain costs something, and the only question is whether you will pay the price willingly or have it taken from you. Fear is the teacher of the warrior. He meets it each day when the body protests, when the task feels too heavy, when the enemy appears overwhelming. By training, he learns to act even while fear screams. For the king, fear is a tool. He does not deny it, he manipulates it. He shapes perception, he governs through symbols, He creates stability by directing the fears of others. To combine both is to be unshaken inside and unassailable outside. You master fear personally, then you master fear politically. That is how empires are built. Vision is the inheritance of the king. He must look farther than the battle in front of him. He must anticipate betrayal, famine, revolt, ambition from rivals. He cannot afford to think only of the strike. The warrior's training teaches immediacy. The king's thinking teaches foresight. The union is lethal. The warrior trains to face what is here. The king thinks to shape what is coming. Without training, vision is hollow. Without vision, training is blind. When you hold both, you become the figure who not only survives storms but designs the weather itself. Power without balance is ruin. The warrior alone may burn himself out in endless struggle. The king alone may become brittle in endless contemplation. To hold both within you is to have fire and strategy in one body. The world rarely sees such figures, and when it does, it remembers them forever. Because the warrior's readiness means no opponent can destroy him quickly, and the king's foresight means no opponent can outlast him slowly. Together, they form an architecture of power that cannot be toppled easily. The human body was not designed for this flood. Once, your ancestors measured meaning in the crack of branches, the smell of smoke, the shift of animal tracks in the mud. Each signal was rare, vital, and direct. Now your nervous system is choked by thousands of inputs before breakfast. Screens light with 100 voices. Notifications mimic alarms once reserved for survival. Advertisements scream with the same urgency as danger. The flood is constant, and the mind built for scarcity drowns in abundance. Without training, you confuse the loudest signal for the truest one. You start to mistake stimulation for purpose, noise for necessity, urgency for meaning. This is the trap that keeps most people running but never moving. Overstimulation is not just distraction. It is distortion. It makes the unimportant feel critical and the critical feel invisible. In the ancient world, a single threat or opportunity was enough to consume the whole body. Today, threats are digital, opportunities are fabricated, and your nervous system reacts as if every flickering image were a predator. This is why anxiety and paralysis thrive. The system has not evolved, but the inputs have multiplied beyond reason. Warriors train to filter. They learn to see through the storm, to separate the sound of the arrow from the chatter of the crowd. Kings train to frame. They decide what the signals mean, who they serve, and how they are woven into a larger design. Civilians, untrained and unarmed, drown. They give their focus to whoever shouts the loudest. The warrior's filter is not natural. It is carved through repetition. He stands in chaos until the chaos no longer blinds him. He learns which signals demand attention and which are irrelevant. Training is not just physical preparation. It is neurological sharpening. To filter is to save the nervous system from wasting itself on noise. A civilian with no filter burns out on inputs that do not matter. A warrior can stand in the same storm and see only what matters, moving with precision while others scatter. This is why training matters. It does not just make you stronger, it makes you immune to noise. Kings, however, carry a different burden. Filtering is survival, but framing is power. The king cannot merely ignore signals. He must assign meaning. He must take the chaos of the world and shape it into a narrative that his people can follow. Without framing, even victory feels like chaos. The king understands that information is not reality. It is clay. To think like a king is to take the raw clay of input and sculpt it into architecture. This framing creates order. It separates panic from strategy, distraction from direction. Civilians with no such training take the flood as truth. They let the flood decide their emotions, their choices, their lives. Modern life tests you more brutally than war in one way. It bombards you with countless battles at once, most of them irrelevant. If you do not learn to filter and frame, you will die without ever fighting a war that mattered. You will spend your energy on arguments that mean nothing, pleasures that give nothing, fears that lead nowhere. You will drown in overstimulation and mistake your flailing for movement. Warriors and kings, however, know the truth. The world will always flood you. Your survival depends on what you allow through. Overstimulation rewires the brain to crave novelty. Every new signal releases a drop of chemical reward, until you are addicted to switching from one meaningless thing to another. This addiction destroys depth. You lose the ability to stay long enough with one pursuit to reach mastery. Obsession becomes impossible because distraction rules you. Training like a warrior rebuilds that capacity. It teaches your mind to hold focus when the body begs for release. Thinking like a king teaches you to weigh signals by their worth, not their volume. The civilian, lacking both, becomes a servant to the flood. The difference between drowning and commanding is the same difference between survival and greatness. Warriors filter so they can act without hesitation. Kings frame so they can command with vision. Civilians, exposed with no defense, mistake the flood for destiny. They live reactive lives, pulled by whichever signal feels urgent. This is not life, it is submission. The flood is not going to stop. Your nervous system will not suddenly adapt. The only answer is training. If you do not filter, you will live in a state of permanent overstimulation. You will confuse anxiety with urgency and boredom with failure. If you do not frame, you will mistake random events for fate and noise for meaning. This is how people live decades without direction, always busy, never building. Warriors and kings cut through that illusion. They understand that power lies not in the flood itself, but in the ability to stand above it. Training like a warrior builds the shield. Thinking like a king builds the map. Together, they turn overstimulation into order. They take the flood meant to drown you and transform it into a river you can command. But to remain a civilian is to hand your nervous system to forces that do not care about you. It is to spend your life reacting instead of ruling. Most people walk through life under the illusion of choice. They think each decision is born in the moment, sparked by fresh thought. But neuroscience exposes the truth. Your subconscious predicts nearly 90% of your actions before you even feel the spark of awareness. You are not choosing, you are replaying. You are moving along grooves carved by repetition, habits, and exposure. This is why the untrained live lives that feel scripted. They wake, they work, they distract themselves, they sleep, and they repeat. Their subconscious is nothing more than society's default program, filled with inputs they never questioned. They think they are free, yet they are puppets pulled by strings they cannot even see. A warrior understands that if the subconscious is running the show, it must be trained deliberately. Every repetition is programming. Every drill, every practice, every choice under pressure is an instruction written into the algorithm. Over time, the warrior's subconscious stops being sloppy guesswork and becomes a weapon. He does not have to think about his movements, his responses, his strategies. They unfold with lethal efficiency because he has burned them into his body. His subconscious no longer mirrors society's noise. It mirrors discipline, readiness, and clarity. This is the edge. When others hesitate, he moves. When others question, he strikes. The danger of leaving the subconscious untrained is not just mediocrity. It is slavery. If you do not carve your own programming, someone else will. Society is relentless in offering scripts. Advertisers, politicians, influencers, even your peers, every one of them feeds signals into your subconscious. Over time, their repetition becomes your instinct. You do not buy what you want. You buy what you were told to crave. You do not think how you want. You think the slogans repeated until they became reflex. Without training, your subconscious does not belong to you. It belongs to the strongest voice that repeats itself in your environment. Training like a warrior is not only about the battlefield or the gym. It is about seizing the architecture of your own mind. It is the daily act of writing instructions into your subconscious with purpose. Wake early and you program urgency. Push through pain and you program resilience. Reject distractions and you program clarity. These are not random acts. They are code written into the deepest levels of your mind until they no longer require thought. You become the sum of the instructions you refuse to outsource. When the subconscious is trained, hesitation vanishes. Decision-making collapses into instinct. Not because the person has stopped thinking, but because the thinking has already been done thousands of times. This is why warriors seem faster, sharper, untouchable in chaos. They are not improvising. They are executing a program refined by relentless training. The difference between life and death in a fight is often measured in fractions of a second. The untrained waste those seconds thinking. The trained do not think, they act. Their subconscious does not betray them because it has been forged in fire. Civilians, by contrast, stumble not because they lack intelligence, but because their subconscious is unrefined. They carry a program built by comfort and distraction. When pressure rises, that program collapses. They hesitate, they overthink, they retreat. Their subconscious whispers the easy path, the path of least resistance, because that is what it has been taught. They are not weak. They are untrained. But untrained is indistinguishable from defeated when the test arrives. Thinking like a king elevates this even further. The king does not only train his body and subconscious for efficiency, he also trains his mind to direct that efficiency toward vision. Warriors alone can fight. Kings align fighting with legacy. When the subconscious is programmed with both discipline and foresight, you do not just survive, you expand. You build. You dominate. Efficiency becomes not only reaction but creation. The king frames, and the warrior's subconscious executes. Together they become unstoppable. Society thrives on people who never reprogram their instincts. That is why schools, media, and corporations flood you with endless repetition. They want your subconscious filled with scripts that benefit them. The warrior sees through this. He refuses to let his instincts be colonized. He trains daily, not for appearance, but for ownership of his own mind. The king elevates this rebellion into strategy, shaping an identity that cannot be captured. Together, they stand apart from the civilian who drowns in inputs. Efficiency is the hidden reward of training. What looks like discipline at first becomes instinct later. What begins as conscious struggle transforms into unconscious grace. The fighter who drilled for 10 years moves as if born to battle. The thinker who studied for decades speaks as if wisdom is reflex. This is not talent. This is programming, carved deliberately into the subconscious until it executes flawlessly. To reach this level, you must train like a warrior and think like a king. Anything less, and you are just another default script running on borrowed code. Most people are swallowed whole by their own experience. They wake up, move through the day, react to the noise around them, and collapse back into sleep without ever questioning what any of it means. They drown not in lack of activity, but in its excess. Each event crashes into the next until all clarity is lost. This is what happens when you live without metacognition. You become a puppet dancing on invisible strings, confusing movement for progress, mistaking exhaustion for purpose. To train the mind to watch itself is to rise above the flood. It is to step outside of the current long enough to see where the water is dragging you. This ability to monitor thought, to observe impulse, to weigh action before it becomes destiny is not natural. It is trained, it is earned, and it is the hidden crown, invisible to those who never step outside their own noise. The warrior is defined by action. He does not hesitate. He does not crumble under pressure. His worth is measured in his capacity to strike, to endure, to continue when others collapse. But action without reflection can waste itself. A warrior who never steps back risks fighting battles that do not matter. He risks pouring energy into pursuits that leave no mark. This is where the king completes the picture. The king reflects. He weighs not only what is done, but why it is done. He questions direction, he frames purpose, he ensures that every action serves a larger design. The warrior alone may win fights. The king alone may create vision. Together, they dominate because their union eliminates waste. Every strike is tied to strategy. Every strategy is backed by execution. Metacognition is the practice of watching your mind move. It is training yourself to notice the impulse before you obey it. It is catching the story your brain is spinning before it defines you. Most never develop this skill. They confuse their thoughts with themselves. They let emotions drive unchecked. They react to their reactions, layering error upon error. A mind that cannot observe itself is a mind destined to repeat itself. The same mistakes, the same habits, the same chains. A mind that learns to watch itself becomes sovereign. It is no longer enslaved by experience. It is above experience. Think of a battle without reflection. The soldier charges, fights, exhausts, and bleeds, but never stops to ask whether the battle mattered. Victory may taste sharp for a moment, but when the dust clears, he realizes he has gained nothing. This is the danger of action without metacognition. The king avoids this fate by ensuring every battle contributes to the empire. He does not waste men on meaningless ground. He does not waste years on hollow pursuits. He reflects before he commits, and so his victories accumulate into legacy. This is the crown of reflection. It turns effort into architecture. To train the mind to watch itself is to build an inner king. It requires you to step outside of yourself daily, to interrogate your motives, to measure your direction. This is not weakness. It is the greatest form of discipline. Most people would rather stay blind because reflection reveals uncomfortable truths. It shows them how much of their life is reaction. It shows them how little of their destiny they control. But the warrior who learns reflection becomes unstoppable. His strikes are no longer random. They are deliberate. His actions are no longer reactive. They are calculated. He acts with speed but guided by strategy. Civilians lack this crown. They confuse activity with mastery. They tell themselves they are progressing because their days are full, yet their reflections, when they bother to have them, reveal nothing but repetition. They are drowning in experience because they never rise above it to watch. They never cultivate the distance required to see the shape of their own life. The crown is hidden not because it is complex, but because it is rare. Most refuse to wear it. It demands they become both actor and observer. It demands they live twice, once in the moment and once above it. The danger of drowning in experience is that it feels real while it wastes you. Every day offers stimulation. Every day offers emotion. Every day offers reaction. Without reflection, this feels like a full life. But fullness is not the same as depth. Fullness scatters. Depth shapes. To think like a king is to refuse to be fooled by fullness. It is to cut through stimulation until only significance remains. This is how you separate legacy from noise. You do not let experience define you. You decide which experiences are worthy of definition. A warrior without reflection is a blade with no target. A king without action is a mind with no teeth. Only the union completes the design. Action ensures progress. Reflection ensures direction. Together, they ensure domination. This is the formula hidden inside every empire, every movement, every life that refuses to be ordinary. It is not one or the other. It is both. The ability to move with speed and to think with clarity, to strike without hesitation and to watch without distortion. Metacognition is not philosophy. It is survival. The world is too loud, too fast, too chaotic for untrained minds. Civilians who never learn to watch themselves will always be slaves to noise. They will mistake the urgent for the important. They will drown in shallow waters, dragged by every current that moves near them. The warrior who trains the body gains resilience. The king who trains the mind gains sovereignty. The one who carries both crowns cannot be defeated.